Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Steve, can you hear me back there? All right, good. Thanks for joining us today at Holly Hop, right here in the middle of Lubbock on 34th Street, in the heart of District 3. I'm thankful for Stephanie Holland and her husband Daryl for hosting us today. You know, it's small businesses like Holly Hop that make our community work, and so I'm just very thankful for these guys. I don't live far away. This is one of my favorite places in town. I like my Dr. Pepper float just nearly as much as anybody. So it's we appreciate you letting us come today. I'm joined by City Council Member or Mayor Pro Tem Jeff Griffith, who represents District 3. This is his district. And I'm also Council Member Steve Massengale is back in the back. Also, Deputy City Manager Bill Howerton. Bill standing in for Mr. Atkinson, who's getting a very deserved week away this week. In addition, I know that we have the Deputy City Secretaries here, and I believe I just saw and there's the City Attorney just walked in, and so Mr. Weaver, we're glad you're here. I believe that a couple things. We promised. There comes the police chief right there. We promised both Stephanie and Daryl and citizens that we could do this safely, and so we're asking you to do that today. We have an occupancy limit here, and we'll be we're going to make sure we enforce that. I know some of you are back in the back, but we'd like you to, if you can't be 6 feet away, to please to wear your mask. If you're going to talk and you want to, at that point, you want to pull your mask down to talk, like I've done, that certainly I think makes a lot of sense. A couple comments before we get started. We do this once a month. We generally do it for coffee, and we most often do it at a United Supermarkets around the community. Not always, but probably 8 out of 10 times. They are opportunities for you guys to ask questions, talk about your problems, talk about what's on your mind, share your opinion. They are generally very productive sessions. Last month we had a let's just say, how would you describe it, Michael? It was a little more edgy, wouldn't you say? Yeah.
I wasn't there.
Well, but you told me you watched it, though. It was must-see TV, right? So,
told him he was brave to come back.
Yeah. Well, I can. We've done these. I've been mayor now for 50 months, I guess. We've been doing these every month. We've missed maybe a month a year based on schedule or something, but we generally do these like clockwork. But the value of them to me is when they're productive. That doesn't mean we agree, but that means that we can be civil. And I expect the level of civility to be different today than it was last month. I can't control that, but I can control if we have one next month. And I just think that we can have adult conversations. One of the things that I think makes local government work is that we all we live in the same community. We can't run and hide. I go to the grocery store. I come to Holly Hop. I go to church, and I see my neighbors, my friends, my people I don't know who, And I like to say that, as you know, we run in Texas these are nonpartisan elections. I like to say that potholes are neither Republican or Democrat. They're just potholes. And that's how we try to approach our business. So, that being said, we're done with my opening comments. I would imagine the things that are on your mind are probably on my mind. So I will open it up to the first person that has a question or a comment. Ms. Owens?
I'm Cindy Owens, and first I want to tell you that I think you and the council are doing a wonderful job in a difficult and thankless position. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to ask if there has been any thought given to face shields, those vinyl shields. I know the governor's order says mask, clearly masks shall be worn. But I've been several places where I have seen face shields and no mask, and have thought in this heat, perhaps they would be a suitable alternative outside, or like at a farmer's market or in the gym. Has there been any discussion given to face shields?
Yeah, it's a good question. We in healthcare they use those for a number of reasons. They're cleanable. You can sanitize them and use them again, so you don't run through the PPE like you do. I would think, in my way of interpreting it, that would count for a face mask. Mr. Weaver, I don't know from a legal standpoint. What's your? Do you have a different opinion on that?
The definition of face covering is so broad.
Yeah.
I think it would probably encompass that as well.
Yeah.
As long as your mouth and your nose are covered.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been addressed specifically in the order, just the face coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, the order is written relatively loosely in that regard, from a standpoint of coverings. I was took a few days off last week and was in the mountains, and I saw a lot of people wearing their the face coverings that they wear to ski in or to fish in. The ones that the new age kind of gaiter that we used to wear back in the day, the ones that breathe. And those seem to be a pretty good way of going about it also. So I think that would be sufficient. Maybe our messaging needs to change a bit around that. It's a good suggestion.
As a follow-up, our hearing impaired friends cannot get anything with a mask over the mouth.
That's right.
Speaker, and they are missing a lot. And we just might remember that in dealing with those people.
Yeah, our hearing impaired people are our citizens, our neighbors are certainly impacted by that. And I tell you, the thing that I think impacts me the most is I don't get to see people's smiles or frowns, but generally smiles. And that, I think we talk so much with our faces and the way we approach people. So yeah, it's a really, really good question, suggestion. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Just to add on that, I actually ran into someone wearing one the other day.
Yeah.
And she told me that she can't wear a mask
Yeah.
because it causes anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
So for her, that's her way of doing it, rather than not wearing anything.
Sure.
And I've
Yeah.
never given thought to that. So.
Well, I tell you, by the way, I think maybe we need to schedule ice cream with the mayor more often. I noticed when I got out of my car, it was only 93 today. So it's a cold wave. I'm not giving you credit for that, Chief. I just want you to know. But yeah, I found that wearing it in the 100+ degree weather is pretty difficult, and so I can imagine how it could create that and that kind of situation. Okay, and if you wear an M95. If you're wearing an M95 like Mr. Griffith is wearing, those are really they're made to not only protect the people you're around, but to protect you also. So they're very tight from a standpoint of transmission.
Mayor, some people want me to wear a fuzz. I ain't got another question.
No comment.
There was just an article on the television this morning about the plastic masks. And that is, they basically said it's not a substitute. You can wear it in addition to a face mask, but probably not a good idea because the but it's airborne, it can't get up underneath.
Yeah, I would imagine there's probably, if you ask enough people, you could probably find something around that. I know that in healthcare, you see I'm wearing it along with a mask often, but I don't, I'll comment on the face covering piece. I might as well go ahead and, I'm on the record. People have heard me talk about it. I think they're unusual to wear. I find it to be something that I don't wake up in the morning thinking that that's what I want it to do. But I feel like it's something that we need to be doing. And I base that not on my own gut feel, but I base that on the vast preponderance of science that continues to literally daily support face coverings. In March, early March, the CDC went as far as to say they didn't think that it did any much good to wear face coverings. Okay, they did. They have now changed they've changed their opinion about that. In fact, they continue to post. Including as recently as once last week, and I think even maybe yesterday, more data around why it makes sense to wear face coverings. But, so, I look at it like this. If a face covering allows me, if I happen to be an asymptomatic carrier, and I've only been tested once, and I tested negative, although I did a quarantine on my own because I was maybe around someone who was at that time positive, and I took an abundance of caution for that. But if a mask allows me to not spread it to someone, then I think as a father, as a husband, as a neighbor, as a citizen, community leader, in whatever role I am, I believe that that's something I should do. It's really interesting to me how political this whole thing has become. And I'm here to tell you that I don't look at this politically. Mr. Griffith, Mr. Massengale, and I were elected first and foremost to provide for the public safety of the citizens of Lubbock, Texas. And that's the only lens that I look at this through. And my opinions have changed over time on this, and they'll probably change some more. But, that's where we are. It's hard for me to imagine that some of the very same people that I hear from, and I got lots of pen pals, some of the very same people I hear from that are the loudest about the sanctity of life, born or unborn, are people who are telling me that they're not wearing a mask. That doesn't jive with me. And I only have a bachelor's, and I probably struggled to get out of school, but that doesn't add up. And so I appreciate what the governor did. That we've not gone out and done any kind of crazy enforcement of that. We've tried to advocate and educate and work with people, and we've had remarkable compliance. And I'm thankful for Chief Mitchell and his folks. I'm thankful for our fire marshal and their team, because we've been able to really get things done. And if you see a police car, the man or woman in that car's got boxes of masks. If you need a mask, we'll give you one. If you see a fire truck, same thing. If you stop by a fire station, Assistant Chief Wilson's in the back, but Deputy Chief Wilson's in the back. We've got masks at our fire stations. We are trying to, do this the right way. And we'll keep working on that. And, you may have seen this morning, but Walmart this morning announced that it's mandatory to enter a Walmart starting next Monday that you're wearing a face covering. Best Buy did the very same thing. We've got a number of our businesses in town that are already asking people to do that very politely. And I appreciate that because I think that will slow the spread. My big concern about the spread is the impact on our hospitals. On June the 15th, that would have been 4 weeks ago Monday, on June the 15th, we had 13 people in the hospital in Lubbock for COVID-19 related issues. 7 of those were in ICU. Monday, July 13th, four weeks later, we had 109 people in the hospital. 44 of those were in ICU. So that's 8 times as many in the hospital, 8+ times as many in the hospital, and 6 times as many, a little more than 6 times as many in ICU. Now, you may have seen the graphic that KCBD is running that says we have 183 ICU beds. Yes, but staffing 183 ICU beds is going to be difficult. We don't want to get to that point because that means that we will have closed down non-essential surgeries in our hospitals. About 11,000 people work for Covenant or UMC. There's at least that many more that their jobs rely on those two institutions. It is important that they're able to function as much as they can, business as usual. It allows people to put, not only does it provide for health care, but it allows our families to put food on the table. So that's my position. I'm done. Sermon over. Yes, ma'am.
We're here to represent the 2 people have commented already. One lady said about people that are hard of hearing, and then another lady mentioned anxiety issues. So there's many adults in our community that have special needs.
Yeah.
And not to minimize anything, anxiety or deafness or anything, but there's many special needs in our community. So those of us that work in the industry, I work in an adult daycare, there's day rehabilitations. We would like to be considered along with children's daycares as far as when you have to make decisions about populations that, the number of people in a population in a building. We are considered, in our minds anyway, we're considered an essential business. Families work,
That's
they
right.
need some place to go. You can't call mom and dad and say, Billy's daycare is closed today, could you take care of him?
Right.
No one knows how to care for this gentleman here unless you've been trained and in service.
Sure.
And it goes on and on.
Right.
I'm a registered nurse. I work at the Adult Day Center. I feel like I have a good knowledge of infection control techniques.
Right.
So I would like that considered. So far, the adult population in special needs is pretty much a ignored, neglected population. When you're children in schools and things, you have lots of services offered. When you're an adult, funding is cut dramatically. So we need to be on the forefront of your mind when you're making these decisions. I would love to visit with you at length about this even more, but we cannot be a neglected population anymore. Their families need a place to move them to.
Sure. I completely, first of all, God bless you guys for what you do. Thank you. So were you guys not considered as essential?
Well, I
thought you were.
Square foot building.
Okay.
I was told by a person in Austin making these decisions, I was allowed to have 10 people in the building.
Oh,
I
goodness.
said I have a 10,000 square foot building.
Okay.
Figure out the math.
Okay.
So we need
We need to, let's get, Angelica, where's Angelica?
And just so you know, the other,
Yeah.
there's 2 adult daycare, or there's 3 in town.
Yeah, I know of at least 2.
One of them has closed down.
Yeah.
Because they're not getting the attention they need, people aren't supporting them.
Okay.
So we need
Okay.
to be known. Thank you.
Yeah, it might, Angelica's, will you wave real quick? Let's get your information. If you'll give it to Angelica, Abby is not here today, but Angelica is a very capable stand-in. So we'll get thanks for your point. And the daycare's been speaking more to what I think of as the children type of daycare. It's been been a real interesting part of this whole process, and I'm thankful that the governor's office has listened to us on that. We've got a couple daycare owners, operators here in Lubbock that have been at the forefront of trying to give us feedback, quite a bit of which has been listened to. And if you've watched some of the way they've changed some of their orders, we've gotten to them with that. I have no reason to believe we can't get the same kind of feedback for adult daycares. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Debbie Hernandez. I'm a PA. I practiced medicine in Covenant with SWAT Surgical Associates for 40 years. Then I went into diet and lifestyle medicine, and that's what I've done since then. And I really think that what we need to do is all we do is emphasize danger, fear, you're going to die. This virus is so deadly. Instead of looking at it in perspective and know that a very small percentage of Lubbock County citizens have contracted this, and an even smaller number have died. And some of those, I'm not even sure if they're all Lubbock County, or people get caught here and are they counted as Lubbock County, or
I can answer that in a minute, but please go ahead.
but if we look at, this is from the CDC, this is a graph of the age groups that pass away from this, the vulnerable group. Comorbidity is a word that was never in most people's lexicon until COVID came around. The comorbidities are what make those people vulnerable to pass away. So the vast majority of people who have succumbed to COVID-19 are well past 65 years of age, which I'm way up there in that group too. But I'm not worried about it because you have control over your health. And we've been in a pandemic of a health crisis for a long time in this country. We are so unhealthy. 2/3 of us are overweight or obese, have diabetes, pre-diabetes. Those are the people that are contracting and having complications and being in ICU and passing away, unfortunately. So I think we need to empower people and say, you can reverse metabolic syndrome really quickly, very quickly.
I agree.
And there are lots of doctors in town who can help you with that. But you have to know it, you have to do it, you have to take action. So you aren't just a victim waiting for this virus
That's
to
right.
jump on you and say, oh my gosh, I have no power, I have no control. You have all the control in the world. You just have to take responsibility and do the right thing for your health. That's what I wish we could get out there. Because people know that people hear that, but again, all they really hear and take in is 63 people have passed away in Lubbock. That's terrible, that's tragic. That's a very small percentage of our population that has passed away. But we don't think anything about the 655,000 people who die from heart disease every year, who die from diabetes. I know there's 70,000, another 600,000 who die from cancer and stroke. All of those things start with metabolic syndrome, which is preventable. So that's a message I wish we could get out to people and help people understand. You're not a victim unless you don't take control.
Yeah, I like your message. I've tried not to be a fearmonger about how lethal this virus is. That's the good news about it is those that contract it, a very, very 99% plus recover. It hit pretty close to home with me. My 53-year-old brother had a really bad case of it. A little overweight, but that's it. Very active, and spent between 11 and 12 days with temperatures between 101 and 102. And it's but he twice went to the hospital and they told him to go home and take Theraflu and drink a lot of liquids. And I said, sort of suck it up. That was that's my medical. But
That's another problem. The treatment has been so politicized.
I agree with that. I agree. It's a virus.
People are afraid to do
Yeah, well.
early treatment that could keep that from ever happening.
Well, you know more about that than I do. Here's what I would say. From one of the very first things that I did after being elected in May of 16 was start the Mayor's Fitness Council. I am a proponent of healthy living and healthy eating. I'm joined by some of my marathoning and running friends right here. And we were just talking about our runs. I told them that one of the good things about the pandemic has been that I haven't been traveling as much, so I don't have an excuse not to work out. I'm married to someone who makes sure we eat well. And in fact, I went to Tom and Bingo's for lunch and brought her some home, and she said, "Don't bring the bread. I'm not eating the bread." That's sort of the kind of deal that it's been a 34th Street day for me right here today, and as a lot of them are. I may go to Bangkok Thai tonight. Who knows? But I think it's right. And when I was on the hospital board a decade or so ago or more, I remember one time a stat that we were shared, and it said that 47% of the people that spent the night in the hospital, inpatient, so people were either diabetic or pre-diabetic. It's has a remarkable impact on our society and our overall health, and so we do control our health. Some of us are dealt different hands with health. For some of us, it's much more difficult than others. Some of us have things happen to us out of our control that change that. But yeah, I think your message is spot on, and I very much encourage people to act that way. Yes. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, we talk about diabetes.
Yes, sir.
I've been on this for 55 years.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not scared of this stuff. I wear my mask and go on.
There you go. Amen.
I've been on this for 55 years. I had 5 bypasses in 2011. Don't worry about it. Just go on.
There you go. I like that.
And I'm still going.
Do you have any ice cream yet?
No, I don't need no ice cream.
Okay, I'm just checking to say. Okay, good. All right.
But
Got.
I don't worry about it. If I die, I die. I've been awful good for 75 years. I just turned 75 July 5th. And I'm happy.
Happy birthday. A few days late. Yeah.
5 years, 4 shots a day.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
Information for the people and a question for you.
Okay, is that you, Gordon? Is that you? I can't. Well, it's actually there's a lot of light behind you, Gordon. I can't. But once you started talking, I thought I recognized the voice. So.
The $12 million that the city or local housing authority has set aside to assist people with their utility bills. Do you know where that's at, or are they getting the information out there?
Yeah, so that's a good. So we have some. Let me make sure. Let's get the numbers right here, and I've got some guys that can help me with the numbers. We got from the CARES Act. We got 14.1 million, $55 a head for our 2018 population. 14 point something million. From the state. Now remember, it came from the feds with no strings attached. From the state, it came to us with, we get to spend it for the same things that the Treasury says you can spend it for, because it's a federal act. But the governor broke that into 2 pieces. 25% of that, so in our case about 3.5 million, could be used for direct aid to citizens. The other can be used for our overall response to COVID-19, testing, overtime, those kind of things. We have put in place programs to get as much. In fact, we've gotten more than 3.5. We'd already reached into our reserves and spent $2 million on small business grants. We've done another $1 million of those. We've done $500,000 worth of utility assistance. We've done $500,000 worth of rent assistance. That's all gone for now. Now, we may. Let me come back to how we could get more. Okay. We've also established a mortgage assistance fund. There's still dollars in that. So if someone was been impacted by COVID-19, we've got dollars for that. And then finally, we set aside some money for childcare. And we probably could even include that to be adult. And I don't know that it's so. I don't know that it's so restrictive. But and those dollars, there's still dollars there. Although they're starting to be. We had to jump through a couple of hoops. It's a long story. It's a regulation stuff. But so there's still some dollars available in those two pots. We've also received a few other dollars from, like HUD. We've gotten some HUD grants. Generally, those are run through existing programs, and Gordon generally, those have pretty lot of red tape. I mean, like an example, we can help with rent assistance through the CARES dollars very easily. If it comes through HUD to do rent assistance, we got to be able to make sure that house doesn't have asbestos in it. I mean, it's got all the it's the right thing. It's just you give it to the federal government and they sort of overdo it, and so that's where we are on those dollars. Now, we've talked to some of you even in the room that have encouraged us to do some things, some grants around mental health, and I think there's probably a spirit for that. I think there's potentially a need for more utility and rent assistance. The cities above $500,000, the cities and counties above $500,000 in Texas or across the country, got their money directly from the federal government. They get to spend it however they want to, as long as they stay inside those Treasury guidelines. There's no 75-25 split, which Governor Abbott put on us. I'm one of a group of 50 or so mayors that have just signed a letter this week and sent it to the governor saying, okay, we've spent those direct assistance dollars. We need more flexibility. Our people are still hurting. So that's one thing that's going on. The second thing that's going on is I believe there will be a fifth federal bit of legislation. I don't know exactly what it'll be. The House has passed a bill that's it's not going to get passed by the Senate. When they come back in August, I guess maybe I think they come back in a week from Monday, and prior to their August recess, I think that'll be the main thing on their list. There potentially could be some more dollars for cities and counties and schools in that. I don't know. I think the money that was provided by the CARES Act is enough. I just like to have our money without a bunch of strings attached to it, because I think we have people that are hurting. So that's where we are. I've got data on that. Mr. Griffith, you want to add to that? Come up here if you would.
Yeah. Mr. Harris, great question. We also, at LP&L level, have got a program where, especially with this heat, we've got the summer, where there's a program so that if people can't pay that utility bill, and obviously the bill's gonna be higher right now, you can pay it out in 6 months. LP&L is allowing folks to do that on the current bill situation, just so everybody knows if people are having trouble. Doesn't waive the bill, but at least spreads it out six payments.
The other thing I would add to that, Gordon, is that none of what I mentioned is that's all in addition to what's already in place. So we have utility assistance grants, not just the payment plan. We have grants available today. You just have to go through the process. The best way to do that, if somebody has questions, is to call 311 and ask to speak to community development. Okay, ask to speak to community development at the city, and we can get you to the right person. If you having trouble paying your rent, having trouble paying for your electricity, you know somebody is. That's the best way for us to help you. You always can call the city council office 775-2040. Does that sound right? Is that the right number? 2050. You can call the city council office and we can get you to the right spot too. But that's a good question. Thank you. Thanks for asking that. Excuse me?
Does property taxes fall into that?
No.
Will those be adjusted?
The questions about property taxes, they won't be adjusted this year. No. The property taxes this year were based on a January 1 appraisal.
Will there be a payment plan or anything to give us some relief?
Yeah, you can do a payment plan today. That's with the appraisal district, as you know. It's not with the city. Our impact on that is the rate, and we start working on budget later this month, and I think you'll hear a lot of discussion about what that rate. Try to make sure that we're very sensitive to what you're speaking of. I think we're bracing ourselves for what appraisals look like in January of next year. Now, most property, this is a real interesting, I don't know how much I find it interesting, you may or may not, but I'm not sure that most of our property values are going down. In fact, I think some commercial property is, certainly those that have an income-based kind of appraisal method are, but we've had, Steve and Jeff help me, we've had more housing starts in the last, we're 200 housing starts ahead of last year through the first 6 months of the year, calendar year, and 200's a lot. And we're talking about, that's nearly 20% above last year. I mean, there's parts, our economy continues to chug along. Our sales tax report last month, certainly there was some pent-up demand, but our sales tax report was ahead of our budget, of our budget, which that meant it was ahead of last year also. Now, could it start to wane potentially? That's one reason I think we wear masks. We keep our economy going. There's rumors flying all over about the governor shutting things back down. I don't think he's going to do that. I certainly don't support that. And if he were to give us that at a local level, that's not something I would be supportive of. But I do think we need to wear a mask, and that's the property tax story. Yeah, Mr. Starr.
We're not doing our job. Students' lives matter. And if we won't stand up for our students and not put them back until they're safe, and the teachers and they really have a plan, we are not doing like an American should. I mean, because my son died when he was 4 years old. Out of Buffalo, my son lost his leg, but my other son died because I didn't have him in a car seat. They didn't have car seats in him. I had him in a seatbelt. He went through the seatbelt in the dashboard, died, went those things. And he was only 4 years old, it's 5. And I guarantee you, if you don't know what it's like to lose a child, who's going to be responsible for these kids if you put them back in schools and they kids and they give it to the grandparents and parents, cousins and nieces and nephews? I mean, they're doing it with the state funds. They've got to get back on time. That is political. If we're going to be safe, let's be safe for our children.
Yeah, so,
I'll comment on that about schools restarting. I certainly understand the safety concerns. I do think there's a way to safely reopen our schools, but it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same, and it's going to be a hybrid kind of model. I was reading a report over the weekend talking about looking back at the spring and looking back at the impact of K-12 education in the spring, and particularly on kids that come from families where both parents work or where there's just one parent, and often kids that live in poverty, and how many of them did not receive education or weren't able to access education. I think for the educational and mental and social development of our kids, we need to have schools open. We need to do it in a safe way. I would imagine that the plan that they have today is going to change between now and August. You may have seen that a couple cities around the state have already moved the opening of school back to the day after Labor Day. I think both Austin and El Paso have done that. I think it was done by the health authority to maybe help the schools a little bit. We're going to be a good partner with our schools. In fact, I have a pretty much a standing call with those folks, and I actually talked to them this afternoon at 4:30. I don't think there's going to be a requirement, and I'm not. This is TEA and in your local school districts. I don't believe that there's going to be a requirement for a parent to send a kid back to school. I believe they have an online learning option as it exists right now. So, isn't that correct? I believe that's correct. Yeah.
You know, but all the studies show that children are not going to get sick. They have not. Like the death rates for children is very, very minuscule compared to influenza. I read studies all day long.
Yeah.
Look at this. In other countries where they've opened up,
Yeah.
they're not seeing an increase in cases in the children. Now the teachers actually protected.
Yeah.
The teachers have to be protected.
Yeah, I think it's the asymptomatic carry.
They don't spread.
They don't seem to spread, although I'm not sure the science on that's exactly where it was. I mean, I don't, but
They carry a very low viral load because
That's correct.
the ACE receptors,
That's right.
the ACE2 receptors, are very low in them. So that's what the science
Yeah.
is putting what I've read today.
yeah, I tend to agree with what I've read.
I just read a minute ago, right here, they said they do not know enough about it. If people get sick, children, from viruses, not just corona, then they will also get sick from this virus. And I just read it here, and they are showing they do not know enough about the kids. If 2% of the population is children, and if you look at how many population we have, and then 2%, they show the number that get sick. If one dies, it's like wounded warriors. Why are we leaving them behind? These children.
Thank you, Mr. Stargell. Okay, let's hear from, yes, sir.
My name is Eric Smith, and I recently was an employee at Scarborough Specialties,
Uh-huh.
and ever since into the middle of March, I was laid off because of COVID-19, not receiving a phone call from Scarborough on knowing when they're going to bring me back. But so many other people like myself without work, and with July 25th coming up, that the act has been passed that Texas Workforce Commission has taken back the extra $600. How would my employer know when to call me, let me come back? Because it's not like I have been fired, just been laid off, and I had applied for other work. How would companies know when they can hire people, or do they have to be in the mood to you that because when I spoke with Holly, who was my employer, she told me that they were not in the mood to hire anyone, so I really don't know what that means, and I know if they'll bring anyone back or not.
Yeah, I can't speak for the company you called out. I do know that those benefits do end at the, I guess what
July 20th.
end of the month. I have a son who was furloughed in Colorado from his job. He was fortunate enough to be called back last week. I'd be in close contact with your employer, and
I
there.
even spoke to Jay Jacobs about
Yeah.
that, and he answered the same thing, that they're just not in the mood, because I don't know, I really don't know if they're ever gonna get, I mean, they have brought some back, some that have been working there for at least 6 months.
Right.
But the ones that have been working there for like 2, 3, or 6 years, I don't even know if they're gonna bring them back or not. It's
Okay.
like they're having half and half in staff, because I know at the beginning, they started making over 100,000 masks for UMC.
Yeah, they made face coverings and masks, or just masks. Would they do? They do both?
They weren't doing that, aprons, they were
Yeah,
doing everything
yeah,
for UMC, but then
yeah.
after that, everyone's been returned back to the original jobs.
Right.
But they said, but no customers have been up there. It's like, I really don't know what the up to now.
Okay.
nowadays.
Eric, let's talk. Let's talk when we finish, and let's see. If we can get you a little.
I miss working, of course.
I know. I understand. That's great. What I like to hear is people that want to go back to work. We hear the bad stories about the other side. People that get called to go back to work, they don't want to go to work because they have the extra money, and I think maybe we can help you get some clarity on that. I appreciate you asking your question. Okay, thank you. Thank you for supporting those Red Raiders too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Even though it is at Tech, but then there's also been talk that Jamestown in New York City and Tech, I don't know if you guys are going to believe this, but we share the same nickname, and there's been talk that may have to be a change on that.
Well, I think their Red Raiders are a different kind of Red Raiders than what we have. But Eric, if you guys don't know, Eric's got another name. It's a super fan,
Yes.
and he rarely misses a Red Raider game of any type. And so, and he sits right in front of me at baseball games, and look, it's good to see you here today. That's right. Yeah. Okay, let's go, Michael, and then right here. Yes, sir.
Everybody's sort of been talking about different examples and things. Is it possible, without pinpointing businesses particularly that are more at risk? There seems to sort of be a broad brush sometimes from the state level. Of course, our daughter is in a salon, and that's the cleanest place in town. But is there a way to kind of get an idea of where there's more danger without targeting exactly where the things are? Because I feel pretty safe. I was glad to hear people talking about keeping your immunity up and all. And
Yeah.
I have everybody I know on turmeric and alpha-lipoic acid and zinc. And, I mean, we do this all the time.
Vitamin D. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Michael. Yeah. So we made a decision early on. Unlike a lot of cities, we have identified places where there were virus transmission, hotspots, contact, and we have to be very careful when we do that, as you know, because you guys are small business owners, and so you have to be very careful because of what goes along with that. So we will continue to do that when there's need. I mean, I'll give you an example. We've got 7 daycares right now that are have at least one classroom that's closed down, but we don't need to. That's right. So it's a fine line. So what our process is for that operator to work with the health department, and those parents or guardians all get contacted, and we put a protocol in place for the kids that have been exposed. We're now taking a lot of precautions to make sure that classrooms don't overlap with other classrooms for these very reasons like you spoke of. So there's a lot of precaution in place, and we'll continue to try to provide the right kind of information. I'll tell you what I tell a lot of people, Michael. If you walk into a place, a restaurant, an establishment, retail store, and you don't feel like they're taking it seriously, and you feel like that might have an impact on you, you vote with your pocketbook and your feet.
That's what Jason Corley said on Fox News.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place in town. I'm not going to call the place out, but there's a place in town that I walked into to running an errand for my wife about 6 weeks ago, and I'll never go back in because it was I didn't feel safe, and I feel safe pretty much anywhere. So anyway.
By the way, we are so lucky to be in Lubbock. There is so much craziness going on in this world, and
Amen.
It's just great.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Law
Yeah.
enforcement being what it is.
Yeah. Thanks.
Is really critical, and we're just blessed to be out here.
We are. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'm glad you brought up the 200 permits issued over the same period last year
Yeah.
with regard to development in Lubbock. I know that the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow to suggest fees to the City Council, and so I know the City Council will be making decisions about development in Lubbock in the very near future. Now, I think anybody would be hard-pressed to argue that we've seen enormous new development go in South and West Lubbock, but we have not seen the same commiserate new development come into the central, north, and eastern parts of Lubbock. And I must say, to be quite honest, I've been looking at your campaign finance filings documents, and I noticed that most of your donors are land developers and home builders that originate in the South and West and are the primary developers.
Most of my donors?
Most of your donors over $500 are, yes. So, what I'm here to ask is.
I don't think that's true, but we could. I don't stratify it by what the people do.
I'm sure the people here would not like to see a spreadsheet, but I can assure you it's very true.
It's public record. I'm not hiding from anything.
So, what I'm here to ask you is, wouldn't that seemingly be a conflict of interest that you are making decisions that seem to favor development in the west and the south parts of town, given
What decisions are you talking about that seem to favor them?
well, Mayor, I'm not going to list out the decisions of your term, but anyone can see that development is headed south and west, and it is not headed into the central and north.
So are you suggesting that the city should decide where development happens?
Yes.
So we have a fundamental disagreement on that. I think the market determines that. We can provide incentives for development, and we've done that. We've done that for redevelopment. We've done that for both in downtown and in East Lubbock, and not everybody likes that either. But I'm not going to get in the business of telling people where they need to develop.
Incentivizing is you've already disestablished the notion of a free market. That incentivizing development here, there, or otherwise already dissolves the idea of a free market. Further, people make choices within the choices available to them, and the city very much does have the power to make a broad array of choices available to development that would enrich the development potential of Central and North and South Lubbock, even beyond what has, in fairness, already been done.
Fair enough. I appreciate your opinion. We don't agree. I will tell you that the council voted unanimously at, I guess, our last meeting in June. Was that right? To take the next step towards impact fees, which you mentioned the CAC, which the Capital Improvements Advisory Commission. They meet again tomorrow. They will be making recommendations to us. We will take those up sometime after we approve the budget, so probably mid-September, early October. Mr. Griffith?
I need to clarify that the about developments. Developments are all over Lubbock. There's a brand new 220 home development going just off the North Loop. It's just outside the loop. And, you know, that goes into the CX thought as to whether or not impact fees, we'll let them do their work. But the neat deal is we've got great new developments going in North Lubbock. We just approved some neat new permits for residential on MLK, on 6th, 7th, and 8th Street. There's developments going all over. There's new businesses going right down here, a block away. It's all over this city we have growth. And to the mayor's point, the market decides. What we want to do is make sure we're not Austin, Texas. No offense to Austin. Nobody in this room wants to be Austin. Raise your hand if you want to be Austin. So you know what we're doing? We're making sure that we have transportation to remain the grid system that was set up decades ago, and will continue to do the right things for transportation. There's a lot going on all over this city. And this council, I can't speak for the mayor or Mr. Massingale, but as the chairman of the Streets Committee, you'll be amazed at what's going on with our streets in the future next 2 years.
Jeff, can you kind of explain for folks that are kind of misunderstanding the impact fee idea? They're thinking it's going to apply all over everywhere, and it's more for folks trying to.
It's zoned to your point.
It's a disincentive for sprawl.
It's zoned to where if this, depending on the plan, it gets approved, and there's many options on the plan, Ms. Ward, but the ultimate is you get infrastructure, new roads paid for as new developments happen. That's what's being analyzed by that committee. We're going to have the ability, we're taking our time to do this and making sure we're doing it right. I'm confident we're going to do it right.
I'm pleased to hear that, and with all due respect to you, Councilman Griffin, to you, Mr. Mayor, that is encouraging to hear, but I don't think anybody could doubt just looking around at the development in South and West Lubbock versus North and Central. You know, it is good to hear about single cases, or in this case, several cases. But what we're saying is an aggressive movement has been made to push out South and West, and an equally aggressive movement does not appear to have, if it's been tried, taken hold in Central and North and East Lubbock. Could you speak to that?
I think we've already, I'll make one quick comment, then I'll take one more question before we wrap up. I'm one who, just like Mr. Griffith, who chooses to live inside the loop. I've never lived anywhere but inside the loop. I feel like the services I get inside the loop are just as good as someone who lives outside the loop. I don't look at a decision I make based upon a city council decision based upon who the proponent is or where it is in town. And so I'll stand on that. I'll take one more question or comment. Steve, I've already heard from you, so let's hear from somebody we hadn't heard from. Somebody did I miss? Yes, sir.
Much of the development north and west, or east is not really much residential, because that's where the industrial growth is, and industrial creates a lot of jobs. So, and some of it goes southwest, so that tends to group together. That's one of the things that just kind of naturally occurs. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's why I have.
I appreciate your comment. I'll take another question. Somebody has a question? Somebody that we haven't heard from? One more?
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, Ms. Starkey.
My neighbor gets in his driveway, opens his pickup door, and puts his boom box on, and it's a diesel, and he leaves all clouds on the night, everybody out there.
Come on, Chief Mitchell. He's right there. You got him. You got him in the corner right there.
Police went over and he said, oh, ignore it. bedroom across the road because we can't even stand to be in our house together for 20 years. And this guy, he has his whole thing all night long. And these are 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 6 in the morning, and these are running for 30 minutes to warm it up all day.
That's good. Yeah. Is this the same one that likes to drive fast?
No.
That's a different one?
This is different.
Okay. Thank you again for being here. Let's thank the Hollands for hosting us and their team here. We will do this again next month. It'll be the middle of the month. We'll publicize as to where it'll be, but thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you being here.